You ever have one of those moments where you're scrolling through your backlog and you see a game you bought or wishlisted and you're like, why didn't I play this game? And that's exactly what I did with Killer Frequency. And I thought that this would be a great game to play for Halloween because on the front cover, you're seeing a guy with a knife in front of a radio station. I thought slasher, horror, and really it's more of a mystery thriller, but there is a lot of slasher elements to it. And I think the game is great. It's very underrated and I believe it's well worth your time this Halloween. In Killer Frequency, you assume the role of Forrest Nash. He's a radio DJ for a very small town of 1,000 people, and you work alongside Peggy, who is this really exuberant, funny, kind of upbeat character who just kind of accepted her lot in life. But there's so much more depth to her than what's initially shown. The conversations kind of come off as, she would be that final girl type individual in a horror movie. She's very smart, she's very intuitive, and she's very helpful, especially in some of the more serious conversations in this game. Upon completing the tutorial, you receive a call from Leslie. She's the dispatch officer. She works directly for the sheriff. And in this small town, there's really like one sheriff, one hospital, one ambulance, all that type of stuff. But when she gives you this call, she informs Forrest and Peggy that the sheriff is dead and that Deputy Rodriguez is knocked out in a cell. And this is where the mystery of Killer Frequency kicks off. As you continue your conversation with Leslie, she'll notify you that the assailant is still there. And then you start to hear whistling outside, and then Peggy and Leslie both go into this panic. And Forrest, being an outsider, just kind of goes, what's going on? He's kind of nonchalant about it. He kind of thinks of this as a prank at first, but then realizes that Peggy is really panicking because in the 1950s, there was a serial killer known as the Whistling Man who terrorized this town. And to Peggy and Leslie, this individual is dead, but for whatever reason, this town has like a Whistling Man night. I forget what horror movie had the same thing where they pretty much had like a Halloween night or a scare night dedicated to that killer. I think maybe it was Scream, but you pretty much have Forrest being in disbelief of everything that's happening, but it's very much real. This individual is outside trying to get into the police station. So now Forrest has to help Leslie navigate trying to hide, trying to find a weapon, and trying to get Rodriguez out of the cell and then also into a cop car that happens to be in that parking lot. So, what's really unique about Killer Frequency is that you have all these different scenarios. When people are calling in because this serial killer is terrorizing the town, you are trying to help these victims survive. And to do so, you're going to have to go around the radio station and find certain items. These can be magazines, these can be notes, all this stuff to help these victims survive. One of the things that I absolutely love about Killer Frequency is that there is not a single scenario that is the same. This game does such a good job of pretty much putting every scenario as like this own unique puzzle. And you really have to pay attention to what you're doing. You really have to be on point with the advice you give because any wrong turn, any misstep will end up with the victim getting killed. And even though you can't see it, you can hear them getting stabbed or getting mauled, and it is absolutely gruesome. I really feel like with Killer Frequency, if the voice acting and the writing wasn't on point, like if this dialogue wasn't great and the interactions between Forrest and Peggy weren't great and that dynamic didn't work, I really feel like this game would fall flat in its face, but it doesn't. This game is fantastic because the voice actors nail it. They really embody the slasher genre tropes that you see in all those movies. You have the douchebag, arrogant type of politician. You have the creepy janitor. You have the dumb kids. You have that, PTSD, trauma-stricken veteran who has a dog at their side. That type of stuff. You have all of these tropes that appear in front of you, but they're all believable. They're all well written, and they do such a good job of making the scenarios believable. They do such a good job of making you empathize with their current situations. It's just so well done, and it's something that I feel like sets a really high bar for writing when it comes to like these mystery thriller horror games. So listen, you're probably hearing this overwhelmingly positive review and you're probably telling yourself, where's the flaw? No game is perfect, and you're right. Now, if you've watched a lot of slashers, you know that the best ones handle that big reveal of the serial killer's identity with subtlety. And unfortunately, in Killer Frequency, it's not handled with subtlety at all. There's really no mystery around it. The moment that person calls into the station, you know exactly who it is. Now, everything afterwards is fantastic, but I just wish that moment was handled a little bit better because I felt like it would have been far more impactful. But I will say that the end scene in this game makes up for that. It's fantastic. And that's going to do it for this video. I really feel like if I keep talking about Killer Frequency, I'm going to spoil it for everyone, and I do not want to do that. I really want people to play this game and make their own judgments, but I feel like it's just one of the best narrative titles out there this year. It's one that I overlooked, and I'm glad I eventually got around to playing it because it was Halloween, and even though it's not necessarily a horror game, it is a mystery thriller, and you are pretty much solving a slasher. So, you know, I guess you can consider playing it for Halloween as like that one game to kind of ease you into things before you jump into the Silent Hills, Resident Evils, Devours, Outlast Trials, that type of stuff. But I really feel like Killer Frequency is worth your time, and it's something that I think people will enjoy. And I'm hoping it kind of becomes a cult classic because I really feel like that's where it's going. So if you like the content, please consider like, sharing, and subscribing. I'm Ken from Pixelated Thoughts, and I'll talk to you next time.
The buzzer's on the front door. See you in a bit.